What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Neve Campbell and Scream 7. The golden question, maybe that's not even the right term, but it really all comes down to her, doesn't it? So I want to talk about all the elements, all the aspects of this. Will she come back? Should she come back? How could she? Really the who, what, when, where, why, all of those. We're going to address that in this video. Okay, will she come back? I think it's 50-50. You know, we talked about this. This is probably the element of this video that we've talked the most about, right? Will she come back? Honestly, it's anybody's guess. And really, it could change from day to day because as we have heard, and I generally believe at least this part of like the rumor mill, look, if she was having conversations for a contract, and I think she was. I think there was plenty of rumors suggesting that before the strikes began, they were heavily talking to her, okay? Now, things have definitely gotten more muddy with the whole, well, did Melissa actually have a contract? Can you fire somebody who doesn't have a contract? Did Jenna have one, or did she kind of back out of it, or what? Did she ask for too much money? There's too many stories. But I do think, you know, and we have heard, like maybe Jasmine and Mason, they have contracts. So it is possible that contract offers were given, maybe more than just those two have contracts, right? But I do believe the rumors that Neve was being talked to, and also her herself in what she said in all of these conventions that we talked about all the way through, right? She was playing it very weird, more very different, let's say, than in the past, where you could imagine she's had these discussions and, you know, she can't say certain things because she's in talks, right? Now, whether she had, I don't think she ever actually had a definitive, like she signed her name on the contract, right? I think she probably got close, or at least there were discussions, okay? Now, things can change on a dime. They could offer her more money, less money. You know, their will or their wants to have her in this movie could also change. You know what I mean? Now, I've actually thought of, and I think maybe we've said this here and there, like, how does this even work from the writing department, right? So they have to rewrite at least a pretty okay amount of this movie, considering you don't have half of really, if you wanted a Sydney story and then a Carpenter sister story, you don't have half of it, right? So at the very minimum, you have half of your story left. Okay, so you have to go in and you have to write it. Well, what if you can't get Neve to come back? Like, are you having the writers do two different scripts? One now that is a full-on Sydney story that they already kind of wrote, and now they're just making it bigger. So you got that. And then you have another script that is literally a full-on reboot, doesn't have anybody in it, and they're just starting from scratch. Is that what they're doing? It doesn't sound like that's what they're doing. It sounds like they're just making the Sydney thing the entirety, okay? Judging from the rumors of, hey, they have a wish list and they want, you know, Neve and Patrick Dempsey to come back. It sounds like they're kind of going all in. And that begs the question of, okay, well, then you really got to go at Neve with everything you got. And in this case, it's money, right? It's a dump truck of money backing itself up into, or not into her house. That would probably be rude, and that would probably stop the talks right away. Like her front lawn or something, right? Like in a nice, you don't want to run over any gnomes or anything. You park it and you dump the money out. Honestly, you have to do that. And I guess that goes into a separate thing that we also kind of have talked about. Are they forced where, like, you have to do a Sydney story? Yes. And I think that's the best for the franchise, putting aside all of the drama and the rightful controversy of the Melissa and Jenna stuff. And trust me, like, you know, for those, there's a lot of drama that goes on like Scream Twitter of like, oh, people are moving past this like so quickly. Yeah, it's like, it's a little bit more nuanced than that, to be honest with you. In this case, or in my situation, like, I hate what they did. I think it was a stupid, boneheaded decision. I think it probably, and might still at the end of the day, even if you get Neve back, it still probably hurts the franchise going forward. I believe that. But, you know, pushing it aside for like a different discussion for the day, let's just talk about it, right? No, they are, I think they did put themselves in a corner where without the two that you already had, this is kind of it. And that also has brought up discussions online of, okay, actually, I just saw this, but this was something that we have been talking about for, not saying they copied, it's just similar kind of ideas floating around at the same time. I literally saw a tweet, I think, where it's like, do you think a Sydney and Gail story could carry a movie? I think the answer is yes, and it's actually something we've been talking about since, I would actually argue, since Melissa left, right? Now it was like less than 24 hours in between that and Jenna, but the discussion for those couple days was, okay, you lose them. Well, number one, like, would the movie work as a Sydney thing? I think the answer is yes. Do they have to do it? Yeah, I think you have to do it versus doing a full-on reboot. It's not the time. It's not the time to pull this plug or to flip this switch and to do something so radically different in the ending of your supposed-to-be trilogy, right? So we've had those things, and then I guess the final part to it is not only like, can you do it, but like, would it work? Would a Sydney-centric story work? I think the answer is yes, and I think I've said that for the past like 2-3 weeks. Now, it's not guaranteed. Honestly, like, just putting Sydney in the movie for 60 to 80% of it doesn't guarantee that the movie's like incredible. I think it gives it a pretty good shot, but ultimately it really does depend on the writing. Neve can only do so much, but I think the general idea of like, can she do it? Not necessarily from like a star power. And actually, I think this is where the kind of split almost comes in. Anybody pretending that Neve seems like a very, I met her. I went actually to that Denver Comic-Con one where she first started talking. I met her there and she signed my thing and we talked for like 25. It was very nice, okay? She seems very nice. But let's not pretend like her star power equals I would say maybe like Melissa. Melissa is not all that, big in Hollywood. I think she is now because of the controversy. But let's say Jenna Ortega, right? Neve Campbell is not nearly as big as Jenna Ortega. And so I think the star power of her versus those two, I think she's less. Now, as we've talked about, what does that actually mean? What does that actually do in the box office? Well, honestly, it could do nothing. It could mean nothing at the end of the day. The movie might not suffer. It might suffer $5-10 million. Maybe Neve was kind of worth $5-10 million to the franchise. Maybe a couple dozen million people, which I find hard to believe, but maybe, right? Maybe some people really did not see Scream 6 just because of Neve Campbell, and now you get that money injected back. Now, you might lose money from other things, the Melissa drama, the Jenna stuff, you might lose that. Maybe it balances. Maybe it actually kind of goes lower, right? Maybe you end up losing out on it. But the thing that I'm trying to say, too, and how I look at it, especially for a franchise like Scream, and I hope this is true, and I guess we might actually see this play out, it's not just star power. In fact, it's almost net like Courtney Cox, I guess, but they've always had a lot of unknown people and not that big name people throughout the entire history. Maybe some people that actually got bigger after Scream than necessarily before it. Is that maybe fair to say, right? So I look at it from, okay, well, the star power has gone down, but in terms of like the movie itself, it doesn't change all that much. In fact, I think it's almost a 1-for-1, technically 2-for-1 in this case, trade. I do think you could replace the Carpenter sisters story, not like make Sydney's story what you were gonna do for them. I'm not saying that, but you could take their part out, make it all about Sydney, and I think you have an okay chance of it being an equal trade. Not star power. Star power you've lost, but equal in terms of the quality and the performance, however the other metrics you would measure, right? I think you would have a pretty equal trade there. So, will she come back? I think it's 50. I really think it's tough because then you have the discussions of like, how much does Neve like value the other cast? She seems pretty like morally high where she would kind of stand out against this stuff or stand up against it, right? So it's like, if they come to her, even if they offer her more money, does she like say, well, because of what you did with Melissa, we're not doing it? Is a simple apology enough? Does Chris Landon kind of write to her again? Or something where it's like, hey, we're trying to make a movie. We're trying to do what's best for the fans. We had some boneheaded executives that made some stupid decisions with those two. We want to offer you more money. We want to make, and this is how I would do it. Swear to God, this is how I would do it. You'd go to her and you would say, not from those not like the elites that like got rid of these people. You say, hey, we're going to give you more money. We're going to give you your worth. And we're also sorry. Like, point blank, this wasn't even our choice to do it to Melissa and Jenna. We want you back, even though they're gone, and even though they were fired, or, Melissa was fired and then Jenna left unjustly, right? Me, myself, I'm here to make the best movie I can make. The writers are still trying to write the best movie they can make, and we need you to like kind of complete that. We think you're the best fit for this movie that we now have. Will you do it? That's my pitch. That's how I would do it, and I would hope that that's how they do it. And I think they could, because again, truly, I really don't think they have another option. They could think that they could just completely reboot it. I really don't think that's going to work. I don't see how. We literally have talked about this, so I won't go, too deep or spend too much time. I just can't imagine that going well. And I think that is ultimately what would lose you the most percentage of the fandom. I think you did lose some already, and I think even bringing Neve back, the supplementing of it, I don't think it's necessarily, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, and you're retaining everybody, that 100% say fandom, right, that you had, say, 2 months ago. I don't know if it's still at 100%. Maybe it's at 105, maybe it's at 85, right? It could move. But if you do a full-on reboot, that is where you lose the most percentage of your, just point blank, right? And I don't know. Based off what we've seen from these executives, I don't think they actually care / believe that. So, I'm pretty confident in myself. I'm cocky, right? I believe that, and I think that would eventually show up, it would be proven to be correct, but they might not see it that way. So it's still very 50-50. But the rest of it all kind of follows, right? Should she come back? Well, not necessarily, the moral thing notwithstanding, I think should she come back? Yes, you have to have Neve Campbell come back in order to make this work. Should she literally come back due to what they have done, with handling her situation, then handling Melissa and Jenna? That's way more debatable, and that's what we just talked about, right? How she comes back? Well, I think it involves her husband, her kids, and I don't know, you gotta, we've already heard a little bit about what the rumored Scream 7 would have been, and the idea that there'd be one more twist with her mom, and I think you gotta change up some characters at this point, right? Because now we know this stuff, we've made videos, we've discussed it. If they didn't change any of that, well, we would know the entire movie before it even comes out, right? So you really can't do that. But I think you kind of follow that a little bit. You kind of go back to the beginning one more time. You really, and I've said this before, I actually think Scream makes it past Scream 7. It's a franchise that's just too big, not too big to fail almost, but you can make it for so little and make so much off of it. So I really don't think it ever ends. You know what I mean? Even if Roger's, gone or whatever, I think they will still do it. You could debate if it's the right move for the franchise. That's totally fine. But I think, will they still want Scream to continue? Yeah, there will be a Scream 8, 9, 10, or maybe they'll just again call it Scream and start over. The question would be, is this the end for Neve? Is this the end for Sydney? And that one looks a whole lot more likely, to be honest with you. And I don't even know if I like that, to be honest. But that's what it looks like, at least to me. So you basically, I would say, force this out, promote it as, this is it. This is it as far as you know it. This is it for this iteration of Scream. And then, 5-6 years from now, we're going to do it again, but it's going to be, there'll obviously be some things that are similar, but obviously cast and whatnot will be different. So I don't know. There's a lot to talk about. We've already talked about so much. I'm still waiting for the next thing to happen, right? Because nothing's going to happen since then. I'm sure something eventually will happen, and I'll be right here to cover it. Let me know what you think. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.